Hey, Jim Moina here, out here tied to the dock, and this bait I am absolutely addicted to. However, like any addiction and most addictions, it only gets you into trouble. And by that I mean if I use this bait in competition, it just seemingly just gets me into trouble by wasting time and not generating the bites. But why am I addicted to this bait? Because it's such a tease. This bait generates big bites. When I've used it many times in practices for various tournaments and have generated multiple bites. The kind of bites that can put you into a serious run in any tournament. But it lets me down. In fact, it has let me down to the point where 2 years ago, I completely removed it out of my traveling camper and I just boxed them up and put them in storage in my locker here in Minnesota. So, what is this bait that I so love fishing? And I have put it back in my traveling camper, play with it minimally. But when I'm fun fishing, I always have it tied on. And I always chunk it out there every once in a while because it's fun to fish and it generates big bites. So what is that bait? That bait is the Depps Buzz Jet. The tackle company's called Depps, in case if you've never heard of them, Depps. And this is called the Buzz Jet. They make a Buzz Jet and a Buzz Jet Junior. This is the one that I'm most addicted to, is this bigger one. Because big bait, big fish. It kind of adheres to that principle. So just to give you an example of a couple of the letdowns I've had. Well, let me just start with how did I get onto this bait? Well, a couple guys that I chum with and run into the campgrounds that I'm camping at tournaments. Jim Tutt and Troy Morrow. Several years ago, I was talking to these guys during the off limits day, hanging out, and I noticed on one of their rods, I'm like, hey, what is that? Because I'd never seen it before. So they went on to tell me how it's something that they'd been playing with, and they had heard another pro who caught a huge bag on it on some lake, and so it got my interest up. I bought me some, and I've been addicted to it ever since. It's a bait you never read about in tournament reports, probably because it's never part of any winning strategy. As far as Jim and Troy, I've never really heard them talk about it much since. Probably because they have similar experiences I do. It catches some big fish every now and then, but it just has a tendency to not show up in the competition days. And to give you some examples, the first time I ever seriously used it was on the FLW Championship on Lake Ouachita back. This is the year Brad Knight won, so I don't know, what was that, 2015 or so. That bite there in Lake Ouachita, it's a notorious, the tournament's in mid-August, heat of the summer. I mean, highs are 90 plus, pushing 100, steamy, calm, and that lake's got a notorious shallow bite that time of year. A lot of good bags are caught shallow. It also has a deep brush pile bite, which Clint Davis utilized a few years later. But back to the topwater bite, that lake's got a notorious topwater bite. So I thought, hey, what a great opportunity to test this bait out in practice. And I wasn't using this bait very long, and I started catching some big fish in that practice. And so then I really started putting some hours in practice on it, and it turned out that, I mean, I was not catching numbers of fish, but the quality was there. The quality to really make a serious, if I could get, after practice, I figured to myself, if I could get like eight or nine bites on this bait, my best five are gonna certainly put me in serious contention to win that tournament. And of course, I'd have to do that all 4 days, which, the fact that it was a new bait that I hadn't used a whole lot, I was a little uneasy about it, but it's like, hey, let's give it a ride. Let's go with this new bait. So, of course, what happens during our off-limits day, there's a front comes through, temperatures drop, And the first morning of the tournament, you could immediately tell it was much cooler. The air was more crisp, not as much humidity. And of course, I could not generate one single bite on this bait. I ended up with 3 fish for the day on other baits, just far from the top of the leaderboard. Second day I went out, conditions were a little better. Still cannot generate a big bite with this. I think I caught 4 on this, and then 1 on a frog of all things, and just had 5 keeper bites for just a lackluster finish. Another tournament where I thought I was going to blast the field with this thing. This was on Lake Norman a few years ago. It would have been the tournament Wesley Strader won in a Bassmaster Open. It was kind of held around the shad spawn, and boy, I was drawing some of the top of the line fish out of that lake with this thing. And I actually did make the final day's competition I caught a few fish on this during the preliminary rounds, but it was kind of a letdown. I caught some quality fish doing some other things, and this bait, it did produce a couple of fish, including a giant spotted bass, like a 3 3/4 pound spot in the second day of competition, and that was towards the end of the day. So going into the finals of that competition, I think I was in about 7th or 8th, needing a big bag to walk away with the win. So I just decided I got nothing to lose. Let's just make a serious commitment to this Buzz Jet. And because I knew if I could get 8 or 9 of the right bites, 8 or 9 bites on this thing, 5 of them were going to be the kind of fish that you need to take me out of 7th, 8th place and put me, at the top of the leaderboard, or at least right close to it. So again, what happens? I caught 1 really big spotted bass that finals day, and then just 2 other just mediocre fish, and that's it. I don't know what happened to that bite, but it was such a promising bite in practice. But it was just one of those bites that went away. And there's been other tournaments, same thing. Just you generate a couple big bites in practice with it, and it ends up being tournament time, it just zeroes out. Most of the time, I don't catch nothing hardly. So, in fact, what I actually did 2 years ago, I actually took them out of my boat, took them out of my the camper I travel in, and intentionally let when I headed out in the winter, in the wintertime for down south, I intentionally left them out of my camper, out of my boat, left them at home in Minnesota, where I wouldn't be tempted to use them. So that's what I did there. I have since put them back because I'm being very disciplined with my use of it, and I don't think I've weighed a fish on it hardly at all in the last couple of years. Nor did I before that, but I really haven't. I've used it a little bit. If I think the conditions are absolutely primed to throw it, I'll throw it a little bit, but very disciplined in my avoidance of it. But it is addicting lure, and it's fun, and I crack it out, and I always have it tied on. When I'm fun fishing, I always got it tied on. If there's any chance of a topwater bite, I like to have it tied on, and I'll use it. So, and I also another tournament was Sandy Cooper a few years ago. I was doing well with it in that practice. And dang it let me down too. There's other times as well. But let me just show you a little action of the lure, and then we'll call this video an end. So, anyways, here's the action of it. And it is a lure. Where is that lure? There it is. Let's get it in frame. And it's just one of those baits that just crawls along the surface. It's got a propeller on the back that kicks up a little extra commotion. And it's just a mesmerizing bait to me. It just kind of lulls me into I don't know, it's just seductive kind of bait, that's for sure. So anyways, that's the lure I'm addicted to. And like any addiction, it is going to get you in trouble.